The next problem that I want to talk about is about the fact that you've pointed out that India has no homegrown big four consultancies. And I think you also wrote something about a similar topic today in the Indian Express, is what you were mentioning. So, what exactly do you think is the single biggest shift required within the Indian professional services industry that will help us also to have domestic or homegrown multinational companies?
So I'm talked about this is that, and here one clear thing I want to make sure that we are not talking about audit. Okay, we're talking about consulting. Now, in consulting, there are basically big seven. There's the big four with the audit firms, consulting arms, and the three Bain
MBBs, McKinsey, BCG, Bain.
MBB. Yeah. So let's call them big seven. Yeah. Now, the big seven basically dominate this industry, which is somewhere between $250 to $300 billion globally. If in India, it's about $5-6 billion. Now, why do they dominate it? Well, they dominate it because they are multidisciplinary firms, which can give you a full offering of all kinds of products. So, supposing you want to do the Olympics in India, then who are you going to invite? You will need somebody who has got the following skills. They need some financial skill, they need advertising skill, they need architecture to build all the facilities, town planning, logistics, sports management, advertising. There's a whole bunch of skills they'll have to bring to the table. In India, there is no such firm. Partly because they're not allowed. And the reason they're not allowed, interestingly, is because the professional bodies that manage the individual components don't allow them. So the Bar Council of India will only allow you to create a lawyer's firm which is only made up of advocates. Similarly, the ICA will only allow you a chartered accountant. The actuary people will only allow actuaries. So now you'll get basically what is happening. In order to protect your little pond, you're not allowing anybody to sail the ocean, where the game is sailing the ocean. So what we end up with is these chota firms. And then there are all kinds of restrictions on them in terms of being able to advertise and create brands also. You are a chartered accountant, you'll be aware of this. Yeah. So we have a peculiar situation where you have great global brands, PwC, Deloitte, this, that, the other. But if I and you decide, Lodha and Sanyal, we want to create a thing to compete with McKinsey, we can't do it because I cannot build a brand. We're not allowed to create a logo. We are restricted by the rules of ICI. It says that you cannot have anything above font 14. You're aware of this, right? Yeah. This is crazy. Now, I understand why there are some restrictions. Now, you do not want, for example, a solicitation in the way you have advertisements on television in the US, having trouble with your husband, here is a divorce lawyer's phone number, or you have ambulance chasers and so on. We don't want that in India. Have restrictions on them. I'm fully okay with that. But that doesn't mean that you don't allow branding. Branding is different from advertising and solicitation. And we have to distinguish them, especially when we allow the foreign brands to operate in India using proxies of various kinds, or we have grandfathered them in some fashion. So basically, I routinely go to conferences where you will see all the big seven brands behind me on the thing. Not a single Indian name, because the Indian names are not allowed. So we have shot ourselves in the foot. Now this is ironical when anywhere in the world you'll go, Indians dominate the consulting business worldwide. You go anywhere, even the big seven employ large numbers of Indians, not just in India, but abroad also. And yet there is no Indian big seven. So one is, of course, the protectionist attitude of our own professional bodies. But then there are other things also. I mean, the government contracts, for example, the way we tender them, the way the tendering is written is that it's impossible for an Indian company to start up. For example, we are trying for a 1 crore contract, say a government contract. You will discover it is only open to companies that have got 100 crore turnover. How many Indian companies 100 crore turnover? You see, you're simply blocked out of the system. And why do you need 100 crore turnover to do a 1 crore business? Similarly, you don't allow portability of your track record. Let's say I work for one of the big seven. I've done some major projects of some sort. Now, if I decide to leave and set up my own startup in exactly the same area, my track record of having done it for so many 20 years, 30 years, let's say, will not be portable. Because the track record is given to the incumbent firm. So now this favors the incumbent firm forever. Now, this is strange when in every other field, we encourage the startup. But in this field, you actually penalize the startup when it's in fact ironical that the person who you're penalizing actually has been doing this for 30 years. You see, so there are many issues in this field which I have written about, and let's see how we can resolve them.
No, I think I agree with you here because talking about the CA firms, so like it's a professional misconduct if you are also like talking or like just branding and advertising your firm's logo on any of the social media platforms or any of the websites. And there are like norms on website also. It should be this font size, as you mentioned, and the logo and something like that should not mean as if you're the best firm. You're not even allowed to write, "This is India's leading tax services firm" or something of that sort, because it will give a sense that you are soliciting land, you are trying to solicit. So I think there are like a lot of stringent laws, especially
and by the way,
CA
the
firms.
big seven simply bypass it because they function in India through proxies, whereas their branding is done outside India. Everybody knows who these large companies are. So they don't need Indian market to create brands. Those brands exist. It's Indian firms who cannot build a brand in their home market.
So do you think if the regulations are little less stringent, then
the regulations have to be made to be sensible to our current context. I mean, what's the point of having a free trade agreement with, say, the UK, and Indian firms cannot take advantage of it because they're simply not allowed to build a brand inside India? Whereas PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, all these British firms can function in India, we can't go there. Why?
I think that's
and it's not because blaming it on them. It's we who have restricted our brand building or creation of multidisciplinary firms.
If you learned something new from this video, do share it with your friends and subscribe to this channel so that we can bring you the best content possible. Also, if you want to watch this entire episode, click on the link in the description box and you can go to Kushal Lodha YouTube channel and watch the entire podcast episode. Thank you so much for watching this and have an amazing day.